Welcome back to the conversation. Speaking with the opposition leader in Jamaica, Mark Golding, talking about matters concerning the COVID-19 pandemic. One of the issues that has always been a problem, even before COVID, was the crime situation in Jamaica. Homicides are plenty, and the government is struggling to respond. Mark Golding, the opposition, beg your pardon, the Deputy Prime Minister, the Minister of National Security, Dr. Horace Chang, recently spoke in Parliament, restating what he says are aspects of the JLP's Plan Secure Jamaica. And he was deliberate in pointing that out. No doubt to take the air out of the balloon of those who say, well, the government has no crime plan. We say, well, this has been here since 2016-17, set to run until 2023 fiscal year, set to cost about $176 billion. So there is that plan in place. And he says that this plan, supported by enhanced security measures, and we're going to come to that later, that is the way that they're going to tame this crime monster and make the country, the feeling among people who live here more safe. You were there, you engaged them in debate. Do you believe in this Plan Secure Jamaica?
I don't really see it as a plan. I mean, I think they have tried to increase the capital spending on the security forces, but their main strategy seems to be to expand the military, and the numbers in the JDF have grown significantly in the last 4 or 5 years. On the other hand, the numbers in the Jamaica Constabulary Force, the police force, have shrunk. At a time when murders have gone up and where, we were trending down between 2011 and 2015-16, and then there's been this spike since, and their only real response to it has been the states of emergency, which really didn't work. They may have worked in certain locations, but overall the crime data remains very bad. And now the court has, of course, ruled on a case brought by some young men who had been detained without charge for very long periods of time, that type of use of the state of emergency is not constitutional, and there are a number of problems that the court cited on that. So it seems that right now the state of emergency is off the table as a policing tool.
Yes.
So we are waiting to hear what the government really plans to do to get things under control, because in the last couple of weeks the situation has been very dire. January is marginally up from where it was a year ago, but the last 2 weeks of January were really bad, and there were some frightening incidents, as you know, the lady in the church who was murdered and what have. So, we're waiting to hear exactly what they plan to do about this, without using the state of emergency. They have the ZOSA legislation, which is really the main initiative that they've come with since being in government, and we thought that was going to be their primary tool for addressing these issues, but they've hardly used it. I mean, they've used it in 4 locations, very small locations: Mount Salem, Denham Town, a section of Greenwich Farm, and part of Augustown. But the situation of high levels of murders and so on is much broader than that. And we were told that they were going to be expanding the ZOSA to many more communities. That hasn't happened. So I would say, you can give a name to something, what they call it, Plan Secure Jamaica.
Yes.
But the plan doesn't seem to be working, if there is a plan. And the state of emergency, which was a primary tool that they were using, they were really using it in what the court has said, subject to what the Court of Appeal may view it, is an unconstitutional way.
Yes.
So I'm very concerned about the lack of any clear direction on how we're going to deal with this issue.
Well, here's the thing. The police commissioner recently had a press conference where he said that, look, when we put in the states of emergency, we didn't get to have it in place long enough for the longer term results to be borne out. And so that was the lack of support for it. And he said, look, I don't want to get into the political nature or the political undertone to the states of emergency, but there is. By saying that, he suggested that there was political games being played. He didn't say that, I'm saying that. And I'm saying, if the opposition is honest, wouldn't it say that its support for the states of public emergency over time has not been consistent and has not married with what the people on the ground in the areas where the states of emergency have been imposed are saying, because they seem to be embracing of it?
The people who are living in the communities which are affected by high levels of violent crime want security. They want a strong security presence. They want the situation brought under control. And that can be done using the tools that exist within the Constitution. Section 9.2 of the Defence Act allows the Prime Minister to direct the Chief of Defence Staff, who's the head of the JDF, to deploy the JDF in support of the police. And that has been done for many years in Jamaica. So where to the extent that the police are struggling to manage a particular situation in a particular location, the JDF can work in support of that. To the extent that that needs to be expanded in any way, we would look at legislation to do that. And we're not hostile to the idea of trying to use police and the military in the most effective way possible, but it must operate within the rights that citizens have. You can't have a situation where for years on end, which is what the Commissioner of Police seems to want, the police can detain people for long periods of time without charge, without access to the court. In the case of the state of emergency in St. Catherine, they didn't even appoint the tribunal, the appeal tribunal, for months and months, and there were thousands of people who were detained there and were there for fairly long periods of time with no recourse, no legal recourse whatsoever. So our thing is, look, first of all they seem to be focused on is suppression. In other words, the fight against crime, reacting to crime. That's very important, but that is just one piece of it. The other piece is, how do you prevent crime? What are the sources of crime? What are the root causes of crime? What are the social and cultural and psychological conditions that is spawning so much of this crime? And what do we do about that? We were proponents and strengthened the peace management initiative with violence interrupters in these communities, local people on the ground who were trained and helped to nip problems in the bud and bring parties together to work out issues before they escalate into serial violence. That has been defunded. The Unite for Change program, which is a program looking at investing in trying to provide youths who are not in training and not employed on the corners, very vulnerable to being drawn into a life of crime, get them on a path to constructive citizenship through mentorship, through retraining, remedial education, etc. That doesn't seem, the government seems to have very little, they don't see that as part of the security strategy.
But do you still believe in that? And here's why. I'm listening to you talking about the last 2 points you made about the well, I'm going to call it the interventions that are needed to regularize certain things in troubled communities, and of course Unite for Change and what benefit that will bring. But I'm going back to the last time a PNP opposition proffered a crime plan. It was January 2018. I'm picturing it now. Dr. Peter Phillips, then PNP President Opposition Leader, sitting flanked by, beside him, the then party chairman Fitz Jackson, and of course Julian Robinson as General Secretary at the time. And the 10 points that he put on the table for consideration didn't have the two things that you just spoke of. And this was the second crime plan the PNP had been putting on the table, because they had already put one on the table in 2017. So I'm saying, is it that the 2018 crime plan, which didn't have the things that you just mentioned, those came out, that plan came out of a retreat, a PNP retreat. It was after the retreat that Dr. Phillips called the press conference. Are you saying that, well, the dynamics have changed, and even though he didn't see it necessary to put that on the table then, you believe it is necessary to put this on the table now? I just want to get clarification on that.
Well, I think in that press conference, they were focused on initiatives that could be alternatives to the unconstitutional states of emergency, and what measures in terms of police activity and JDF activity ought to be taking place. Dr. Phillips was one of the architects of the Peace Management Initiative. I think it came out when he was National Security Minister under Portia Simpson Miller before 2007. So that this is not something that he ever abandoned. I mean, he may not have articulated it in that press conference, but the whole approach of using social interventions as a key strategy for dealing with Jamaica's structural crime problem has always been what we believe in. It was what we pursued in the last time we were in government, and it's what we intend to pursue again when we're next in government, because we really believe that there's no other solution to this other than investing in the people, improving conditions of living in the communities which spawn high levels of criminality, and giving young people a better chance in life.
On that point, you spoke earlier about the movement, the upward movement in the number of JDF recruits. And just recently, maybe a day or two ago, there was a press release from the JDF that 600 graduates are now going to be passed through the system. So the numbers going up even more. And then you cited the Defense Act, which gives the Prime Minister the freedom to instruct the JDF to
support the police.
Right. But doesn't it stand to reason, an opposition leader? Under normal circumstances, you have your police doing a lot of the heavy lifting. But we've not been in a normal situation in Jamaica for a very long time now. Doesn't it stand to reason then to increase the number of JDF personnel you have to go on the kind of operations with the police that will destabilize the kind of gangs and gangsters we have, who are different from gangs and gangsters we've ever had at any time in the country? And so it's not an approach to be sneered at, but an approach to be embraced, because it marks doing something different in response to a problem that is different.
I don't think that the JDF can be strengthened at the expense of the Jamaica Constabulary Force in dealing with Jamaica's crime problem. Soldiers are not policemen.
True.
They're not trained to do police work. They don't have any investigative skills. They're not trained in the collection of evidence, in preparing cases for trial, and so on. Soldiers are there to fight essentially wars. That is really what they're trained to do. So I'm not against the JDF being improved and expanded, but what I don't like is a strategy where we see the JDF growing rapidly and the JCF shrinking fairly rapidly as well, in the context where we need to be properly preparing cases to get to. We have anti-gang legislation. We've had one trial which has led to a conviction. In
a big trial, though.
Well, whatever, big or small, we had one, and many of the people who were charged got off. You know, several of the defendants.
You're talking the Uchenz Wilson trial.
Several of them were released. So the record of the government in enforcing the anti-gang legislation is poor.
Yes.
And I'm not blaming the government as such, because that is a function of the technical work within the police force and their ability to apply the legislation, get the necessary evidence, and prepare a proper case, and the DPP's office working with them. So what I'm saying is that is where we need to strengthen. We need to make it. There needs to be less impunity.
Yes.
We need to have more effective prosecutions, and so that we have a situation where persons who are doing these things know that it's likely that if they're caught, they will be convicted.
But what I'm saying, you spoke some truisms earlier, because you said, of course, that JDF, the military doesn't investigate and prosecute cases. Fine, that's a matter of record. But I'm saying it is in the infiltration and disruption of gang activities that perhaps it is that the military is being called upon to play a greater role. And of course, the prosecutorial aspect of the link in the chain is handled by the police, of course, which is what they're supposed to do. So I'm saying, do you not see the increase in the military numbers as giving more operational support, more disruptive support to the police, and then allow police personnel to carry on with the very important work of prosecuting those who they have caught and linked to crime? Don't you see any merit in that?
As I said, I think I see merit in the strengthening of the JDF, because it's an important institution, and to the extent that it supports the work of the police force in suppressing crime, it is a tactically important asset that we have. But we have an establishment in the JCF of over, I think, 14,000. But the actual strength of the force, i.e. the actual numbers that they have in them, is closer to 10,000.
Yes.
So, to my mind, you can't be looking at addressing an issue of high levels of violent crime, a high level of impunity, relatively low conviction rates, especially in the gun court, and say that you're going to deal with that by strengthening the military, and while the police force remains underfunded, really. So that is, and look, they will say, well, we're spending a lot more now than was spent in the last PNP government, which is true.
Yes.
But that is because the fiscal resources of the country has expanded significantly
I
because of the reforms in that period.
I'm going to pick up this point in the next segment. Speaking with the opposition leader, Mark Golding, talking about crime, the management thereof, or the lack of management of crime. More after this.